Hello and welcome to the Scoreboard Podcast. I'm your host, Rivka Boord of Jets X Factor, the home of the best New York Jets content on the internet. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe to jetsxfactor.com, discount code 48, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I'm sorry that I'm late today. I've been a little bit finicky with my streams lately. Just timing wise, I'm not scheduling them well. So I hope that some of you at least were able to join. I'd appreciate any comments so that we can answer any questions, things like that. So I normally come on and I have a bunch of stuff prepared to say. I didn't necessarily do that today. Obviously, the win over the Patriots was big. I kind of wish Zerline had hit that field goal, so it would have been 27-3, which just sounds like more of a blowout than 24-3. We know that it could have been a lot bigger than that. Mike Williams had a couple of opportunities. There were a few miscommunications between Rodgers and Garrett Wilson. There were times where Rodgers could have thrown it up to Wilson and didn't inexplicably. And so, but just 24-3, great win. Jets did everything that we could have asked of them. Blew out the Patriots as they should have. Didn't mess around like the Bengals did in week 1 or Seattle did in week 2. And yeah, people are going to say, well, the Patriots stink. But ultimately, the Cincinnati and Seattle both let the Patriots hang around, and Cincinnati actually lost to them. So beating up on the Patriots is exactly what the Jets had to do, and that's exactly what they did. Now, going into Denver, the thought process is the same. It's the same as it was the last 2 weeks, really. The Jets did not blow out Tennessee. They beat them by the skin of their teeth. And even if Will Levis had not made the most boneheaded play that you've ever seen, except perhaps the other ones that he's made this year, Jets would have lost that game and would have been 0-2, most likely. And so, again, they blew out New England. Now it's time to blow out Denver. I know Bo Nix, quote unquote, had a great game last week. I think he had 216 yards on like 36 passes. He averaged 6 yards per attempt. I mean, again, I know they blew out Tampa, I didn't look in the details of the game yet, but it seemed like, it kind of seemed like they beat them based on their defense more than their offense. Their offense just doesn't seem to have much. And so I fully expect and hope the Jets will be able to blow Denver out like they did New England. Now, John, thanks for joining. I appreciate it. Tyson, what's going on with Greg? It's an interesting question because he missed those two kicks in the final preseason game, and he did it terribly. They weren't just misses. They were awful misses. And then against New England, same thing. He's like knuckling them. And, this is the problem with Zerline is even though he's been very good with the Jets the last 2 years, he had been highly inconsistent before that and had some bad years, which was one of the reasons he was a free agent. And so, kickers tend to be very up and down. I mean, we've seen Justin Tucker just not look like himself recently. Evan McPherson missed a field goal the other day, although I don't know how long it was. But some of the, so you have kickers like Brandon Aubrey and Harrison Butker, but a lot of the other ones just seem to go up and down. And so, yeah, it's that. I mean, to me, I'm definitely concerned about Zerline. But I just don't know if there's nothing you can do about it. It's basically like hit or miss. Kickers are like a worse version of relief pitchers in a lot of ways. And so, now Justin, I'm glad that I didn't ban you because that first thing where you posted a Twitter link, I thought you were a bot. Are we worried about the pass rush in Denver? They unloaded with sacks. I mean, there's always reason to be concerned about the Jets pass rush until they actually prove it against a better offensive line. The thing is about Denver is that they've had their own issues along the offensive line. They're starting a 2023 undrafted free agent at right tackle while Mike McGlinchey is on IR. Let me just check this. Broncos. Let's check again. I haven't delved too deeply into them yet, but let's just check their pass blocking. Okay, so you have Ben Powers, their guard, is generally pretty good, but he's allowed, 6 to 139. Yeah, he's been about average. Luke Wattenberg, their center. Let's see where he comes from. 5th round pick in 2022. Doing okay. Yeah, doing average. Quinn Miners, who's generally considered very good, doing pretty well. Garrett Bowles is having a hard time at left tackle, and Garrett Bowles tends to be, in general, has been a pretty good pass blocker throughout his career. He's already given up 9 pressures, including a sack, and he's also been called for 4 penalties. And so, I mean, that's something to think about. Let's just check. All the sacks against New England, yes, they were excellent, and you want to obviously get them. The Jets also blitzed a ton against New England. But the thing is, the Jets, at their core, do not want to have to blitz a ton because they like to sit back and play coverage. And so if they can't get home without the blitz, it's going to lead to questions when they play against better teams. Are they going to have to blitz more and then kind of expose themselves in coverage, particularly because they can't tackle? Let's check this out. Bo Nix he's only been sacked 4 times. And he's not even getting the ball out that quickly. He just has a low pressure to sack ratio, only 8.2%, 2.85 average time to throw, not that short. His average depth of target is 7.3, and that could be one of the reasons that he's not getting sacked so much. He's checking it down. Let's check this out. Yeah, his time to throw rank is tied for 18th out of 31 quarterbacks, so it's about average, I guess. His pressure to sack ratio is the second lowest. He has been pressured 49 times, which is the second most tied for the second most in the NFL. He's had 3 balls batted and he's had 3 balls batted. Let's see his average at the target. Yeah, it's on the lower side. It's the 12th lowest. He has I guess an average turnover worthy play rate, 3.6%, 18th. I mean, some of his stats are just they're not impressive. He hasn't done anything impressive, in his time. And so, again, rookie quarterback, basically a check down merchant. The Jets should be able to really get after Bo Nix. And again, they don't really have any impressive skill position players. Javonte Williams had a good rookie year, hasn't looked really that great since. They have, again, Jaleel McLaughlin is their receiving back. He had some big plays against the Jets last year, but again, he doesn't really scare anyone. Cortland Sutton, I mean, the Jets kind of shut him down anyway. They don't even have Jerry Jeudy anymore, who's the number 2 receiver. I mean, is that league guy? Or I don't even know who they have. I know they have Josh Reynolds. Is he their number 2? Again, Adam Troutman is their tight end. Like, not very impressive skill position players. Might be one of the worst in the league besides the Patriots. And so let's see, who has the second most targets for them? Yeah, Josh Reynolds has the second, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Javonte Williams, Greg Dulcich, and everyone else has under 10 targets. And so, yeah, that's a very unimpressive supporting cast. The Jets don't really have to worry about them. They should be blitzing Nix heavily. Let's check how Nix does against the blitz. I mean, I assume that they're going to blitz again a lot. I also like the way they blitz. They did a very good job. Of scheming up the blitzes. Like, for example, they would pull one guy. They kind of, let's say, would slant one defensive lineman one way to hold the blocker, and then they would blitz another guy through the open gap. And so that's kind of a good way to get an open pressure. I never thought the Jets did a very good job of scheming up blitzes. I mean, in the past, you've just seen cornerbacks coming around the edge and being blocked. And it could be, again, that part of this was just the Patriots' miserable offensive line. I mean, it was bad before they had the injuries, and now, I mean, it was as bad as anything the Jets ever put up in the last 2 years, and that's saying something. And so, but still, I mean, Denver has a bit of a better offensive line, but still, there's enough there. And again, rookie quarterback hasn't looked very good. I expect the Jets to blitz a lot. I just want to check how he does against the blitz. Let's see, blitzed. No, drop 20. Let's see, Nix. So first of all, he's been blitzed on 40% of his dropbacks, which is it's the 7th highest in the NFL. Interesting that it's tied with C.J. Stroud. But he's been blitzed a lot. He has more blitzed dropbacks. He has the most blitzed dropbacks of any player in the NFL. He's actually done reasonably well. Well, not really. He's completed 61.2% of his passes for 282 yards. But he's averaging 5.8 yards per attempt, which is 23rd out of 30 quarterbacks against the blitz. Let's see. He has a pick against the blitz, no touchdowns. Again, his average depth of target is 7.8 against the blitz, which is 17th. So again, nothing particularly remarkable. He doesn't get sacked a lot. Again, his pressure to sack ratio against the blitz is just 5.3%. And so again, there's nothing about Nix's numbers that are overly terrible. He just hasn't looked impressive. I mean, he just hasn't looked great. And so again, underneath Merchant, not a lot of good weapons. The Jets need to blitz him like they did Jacoby Brissett. Now, Arno, how did Mike Williams do against Denver as a Charger? Let's see, Mike Williams versus Denver. Okay, Mike Williams has had 40 catches for 616 yards and 3 touchdowns in 11 games versus Denver in his career. So 616 yards divided by 11 games. He averages 56 yards per game, which for reference would average out to 952 yards in a 17-game season. In terms of specifics, let's take a look at how he did against Denver in his most recent game against them. Mike Williams, or his most recent season against them. Receiving. 2023. Did he play Denver before they got hurt? No. Let's see, 2022. Mike Williams, Denver. So actually, in Week 18, he didn't have in 22, he didn't have great games against Denver. Week 18, he had 4 catches on 5 targets for 32 yards. Week 6 against Denver, he had 2 catches on 6 targets for 17 yards. I mean, it would be interesting to know if he was matching up on Pat Surtain, because that would kind of explain partially why he was struggling. But yeah, I mean, it is something that obviously Williams would know them fairly well. But again, I don't think that necessarily makes such a big difference. I think what's going to happen is Pat Surtain will shadow Garrett Wilson. Now, hopefully Wilson can get a little the better of him, and Rodgers can put the ball in a better spot, because Wilson was definitely open on Surtain at times last year, and there were times where he could have beaten him, but Zach Wilson either didn't target him or made a bad throw. Even on the interception, if you recall, it was thrown way too far inside. If he threw that back shoulder, it probably would have been caught. And so, again, let me check Wilson's stats in that Denver game last year. Yes, he only caught 3 of 7 targets for 54 yards, and he dropped one easy one over the middle. But I seem to recall there being some sometimes where he definitely beats Surtain. Now, Garrett has not looked great this year, and he's played some good corners. Hasn't looked great. Some of it is definitely just not being on the same page with Rodgers. But again, not being able to get his feet down those 2 times. Any receiver who wants to be considered a top 10 receiver in the NFL must be able to get his feet down. I mean, especially that first one was atrocious. But even the one against the Patriots, like, come on, get your feet down. Especially since body control is supposed to be his big thing. And so I'm kind of disappointed in Garrett so far. I feel like the Jets should be attacking other parts of the field. Again, maybe Conklin, another big game. I just want to check what Denver. Again, I have not delved deeply into Denver. I usually do that Wednesday afternoon going into Thursday. And so I'm curious if we have the Broncos, who has beaten them the most. Now, obviously, Denver, let's see. Tampa didn't have a good game against them. I'm going to do this coverage matchups. Who did the most damage? So obviously Chris Godwin had the most. Let's check who played on Pat Surtain. So he was only targeted once for 8 and gave up 1 catch for 8 yards to Mike Evans. But when you have Godwin was targeted a lot. It looks like Godwin had the most success for them against Denver. Rashad White had 5 catches for 18 yards. Bucky Irving, 3 catches for 14 yards. Cade Otton, that's interesting. Cade Otton had 7 catches for 47 yards. Now, again, it's hard to judge stats from this game because the Broncos, again, Tampa was behind for most of the game, so it could be that the numbers are a bit skewed, but the fact that Cade Otton, the tight end, had 7 catches makes you think that maybe it would be worth trying to throw to Tyler Conklin again. Curious who he had those catches on. Let's see. Tampa. Let's see. Receiver matchups. Godwin. So he caught them mainly versus Riley Moss, the cornerback, and then Jaquan McMillan. So they're slot corner. Yeah, I mean, so you stick Garrett in the slot, it's very possible that he would be playing against McMillan instead of Pat Surtain. It's a question of whether they're going to shadow or not. I guess with the one thing is with what's going with the Jets, they can have Surtain follow him to the slot because they don't have a Mike Evans. Garrett is the number one. But again, yeah, that would make you think it could be a Mike Williams game too. So again, the Jets have a lot of weapons. They just need to be able to utilize them. If they're giving more attention to Garrett, that just means that other people should get involved. Like last week, where you had Lazard 3 catches, 48 yards. You had Conklin 5 catches, 93 yards. Brees and Braylon still doing the thing out of the backfield. And so, yeah, I mean, I think Denver should be another spread it all around game. Not great for Garrett's fantasy owners, but good for the Jets. Jets need to collapse the pocket and not let Knicks get outside the pocket. They also need to blitz less often to disguise who's blitzing. I mean, why would they have to blitz less often? Knicks is a rookie. There are not a lot of they don't have a lot of great pass catchers. You're not really worried about your coverage against them. I would be perfectly willing to blitz. I mean, remember what Quincy did to Russell Wilson last year. I would be perfectly willing to blitz more often. As far as collapsing the pocket, the Jets collapse the pocket a lot. The problem is that there's usually one gap for the quarterback to get through, and they usually get through it. So, I mean, I guess if you're saying completely collapse the pocket around him, fine. But the Jets do generally push the pocket pretty well. I mean, especially with putting up the middle, and Kimmel has been had a pretty good start. And so they do push the pocket. It's more that they just leave a gap for the quarterback to get through. Even Nick's getting out to the pocket, again, I'm not like overly concerned about him. He averaged 6 yards per attempt against Tampa. He's not exactly lighting the world on fire, even in his supposed great game. Let's check Knicks. I didn't think he was a particular runner, but let's check. Yeah, I guess so. He has 18 rushes and 2 touchdowns. But I'm still not overly concerned. Yes, Knicks can definitely take advantage of the Jets. But if you're talking about collapsing the pocket, that's when the Jets actually get beaten the most on scrambles. And so, if anything, the way I would see it is that the Jets should. I mean, they've been spying McDonald a couple of times. Having the spy might be a good idea. But again, I'm just not overly concerned about Bo Nix. Even with those carries, he just hasn't looked great. And so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we should be more concerned. But I just feel like the Jets should make him look like the rookie looked like in the first 2 weeks. Sluggo, thanks for joining. Hi, Greg. Yeah, so I answered that about Bo. Yeah, I'm not worried about a rookie in the slightest. Look, maybe I'm wrong. But I can't, like, especially someone with Bo Nix reputation. To me, Bo Nix was a 2nd round pick at best. And so, like, I'm just not that concerned. I can't be. Again, maybe I'm just being overconfident. And again, I was very nervous in week 2, even though they're playing a team that wasn't great. And so maybe I should be more concerned. But I just feel like, I mean, Will Levis was one thing. At least he has that big playability, which he showed against the Jets. Whereas, I mean, Nix just doesn't. And so I'm just not worried. I'm more worried about the Jets against their defense. I feel like their defense has some pieces on it. But I can't bring myself to be overly worried about their offense if no other team was particularly worried about it. See, from what I could tell, I'm just looking at PFF quickly to check out some things about Denver. Yeah, so they have a decent pass rush. They have very good coverage, obviously with Surtain. Their tackling is pretty suspect. Their run defense is pretty suspect. Their run blocking is pretty suspect. So, I mean, again, Denver, there's just a lot about them that not to be worried about. And JT, yeah, exactly. Does Agent Zero get more carries this week? Do you really care if he gets more carries? I mean, he and Brees have had their moments, both of them. Michael Nanny actually wrote an interesting article today talking about how the Jets have been running much more gap concepts with Brees and much more zone concepts with Allen, and it's kind of working better for each of them in that capacity. The one thing I would say about Allen is because the Jets have been blowing at least one block on a lot of their plays, perhaps Allen is a better idea because he can break that first tackle. Not to say Brees can't, he did once, but Allen is better at breaking that first quick tackle in the backfield. And so if your blocking is not going to hold up even in the backfield, then maybe it's a good idea to have Allen in there. But honestly, I mean, look, I think Allen has looked better so far than Brees, but Brees ultimately is the more explosive player. And therefore, eventually, hopefully, the run blocking will get going and we'll see some of those big runs. Hey, he's had one against Denver each of the last 2 years, so maybe he can add another one. I'm glad to see Braylon getting work. And again, we'll see what happens from here. Obviously, having two really good running backs is an embarrassment of riches. It's a good problem to have. Especially at MetLife, where we make other QB's life a living hell. Yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll continue to do that. The Kittle B combo is fun to watch. Excited to see that duo grow together. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they both look really good. I'm actually not surprised that Braylon Allen has looked good at all because they were raving about him at training camp. His film from college, I know people didn't like it, but to me, it looked pretty good. And so, I mean, I'm not. Look, he's not perfect. Braylon doesn't have great vision relative to other backs at times, but again, his ability to run through arm tackles and make the first guy miss and fall forward is very impressive, and he can ultimately make up for that. He's also he can be explosive in his own right. He's not as explosive as Brees, but he had plenty of big runs in college. And again, if the Jets run blocking just gets slightly better. I mean, again, Braylon, if he hadn't tripped over his own man in this game, probably would have had a 40-yard touchdown run. And so again, yes, this combo is a lot of fun to watch. And, hopefully, again, it's not great for Brees fantasy owners that Braylon Allen is getting so much work, but it is good for the Jets as a whole. You keep Brees fresh, you get Braylon some work, you give them a change of pace. Overall, it's a lot of fun to watch, and it's great. 3+ Jets picks, 2 for Sauce. I mean, look, Sauce dropped a likely pick 6 against Denver last year. I am not betting on Sauce getting picks. Especially because one thing that's not talked about enough about Sauce is because the Jets play a lot more man coverage. They play man or they play match quarters, which essentially turns into man coverage. When you're playing man coverage, you're playing the receiver, not the quarterback. And so you tend to turn your back to the ball. When you have your back to the ball, you're much less likely to get interceptions. And that's why players who play more man coverage tend to have more pass breakups, hence Darrelle Revis. And players who play more zone coverage tend to get more interceptions. Like a guy maybe like a Trayvon Diggs or a Deron Bland or something like that. And so that's one of the reasons the Jets cornerbacks don't get a lot of interceptions. But if they're going to get picks, it'll have to probably be their safeties. That was one of the only things I didn't like about getting Chuck Clark. Whitehead did have some picks for the Jets, primarily just because of positioning and things like that. Clark isn't fast enough, and he only has like 3 career interceptions, I think. And so that could cost the Jets, considering that their safeties have been the main source of their interceptions over the years. But again, they need Tony Adams to pick balls up. They need Michael Carter II to catch his picks. They need Mosley to catch picks. They need Quincy to catch picks. But I'm not betting on necessarily getting a ton of picks. I just want more sacks and just make Bo Nix look bad. He's faster than I thought too. You're talking about Braylon. I mean, again, if you watch his college film, he has pretty good acceleration. He really does. You could see it all over his film. And so I'm honestly not surprised with the way he looks. Hi, Jason. Thanks for joining. I look at the Jets backfield with Allen and Brees, and we could have a Marshall Faulk and Earl Campbell equivalents. I mean, I wouldn't go that far. Allen has a long way to go, and Brees hasn't quite looked like Marshall Faulk so far this year. But, I mean, conceptually, in terms of prototypes, certainly. And again, they call them Thunder and Lightning. Not that Brees doesn't have the Thunder. He's not this little scat back. He definitely has Thunder too. But ultimately, they can be that 1-2 punch. And so, yeah, I mean, definitely a great combination. That's my only knock on Sauce. He doesn't come up with picks, but he shuts just about everyone down, so I can't complain too much. Again, the bigger issue for Sauce is that he doesn't catch the picks that he could have. He dropped like 3 or 4 picks last year. I'm not concerned about the fact that he's not getting picks when he doesn't really have opportunities to. Now, to be fair, sometimes he doesn't get his head around. Even that play against Ridley, not that he should have picked it off. It should have been Chuck Clark, but he didn't get his head around on the play, which is one of the reasons that he stopped. Again, he didn't see what happened. But ultimately, he doesn't have a ton of opportunities because he's always in man coverage. But the thing is, with Sauce, is you need him to catch the balls that are thrown his way. Yeah, he dropped 2 pick sixes. He had the one against Dallas, and he had one against Denver that's not talked about as much. But again, it was right in his hands. So he would have gone down the sideline for a touchdown. You need a Garrett Wilson number 5 in the background behind you. Yes, I probably should switch that. I put that there in the offseason and never switched it. And so, yeah, I guess I'll get that switched as soon as I remember. Now, we'll just talk about a few general themes that we're seeing. As far as Will McDonald, I wrote an article about Will McDonald this week. Obviously, 5 sacks, going to look impressive in the box score. He hasn't quite played as well as that. He's had some good moments. He definitely has. That sack against Tennessee, his last sack was really good. He had a few really nice rushes against New England. But he's not necessarily winning with the consistency that you would want to see or causing pressure with the consistency that you would want to see, at least immediately. Like crediting him with a sack when Will Levis fell over his ankle and then decided to throw the ball backwards is not a great idea. I mean, again, it really should just not count as a sack toward anyone because he happened to fall over McDonald. It counts as a strip sack, which is a little ridiculous. Then you have he also got a spy sack, which is more of a tackle for loss than a sack, because it's on the quarterback. It's called a sack. Then again, we don't look at everyone else's sacks and count which ones were legitimate and which ones weren't. For all we know, Aiden Hutchinson had a bunch of unblocked sacks. Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, we don't watch every one of their sacks. Still, I mean, again, McDonald looks better. He looks like he's adding some semblance of a bull rush, but he still has to clean up the issues. Again, the two things that were all over his film last year were getting contact at first. Tackles would just get their arms in his shoulder pads, and he was totally done. Or they would even get one hand on him, and he was done. And he wasn't protecting against it. And that he ran himself off the arc. I mean, he tries to bend the edge, but if the quarterback didn't take a deep enough drop, he just runs himself straight by. He kind of has to be able to make an inside move and also threaten the tackle inside to soften the edge for him, and maybe also time the quarterback's drop a little bit better. But these are the two issues, and they're still showing up on his tape. And so those are things McDonald has to work on. And the other thing is just his run defense. I mean, it's been pretty bad. I know everyone knew his run defense was bad, but it's kind of been like even worse than you would have expected. He's not even there's really no edge setting happening with him. And so we really need to see that improve, or else the Jets are going to need to, they're just not going to be able to play him as much. They're going to have to use him more in a huff role. Obviously, they're not using him on as few rundowns because they need it, but they're not going to be able to play him in base if he's so bad because on possible rundowns because, he's not setting an edge at all. Not to say that the other Jets edge defenders have been better, but have been much better, but they've been better than McDonald. Jersey Jet, I appreciate it. So that's McDonald. Now, as far as a lot of the Jets team is going to be hard to evaluate. Yeah, maybe against Minnesota because Minnesota has looked better this year. We'll see what they do this week. But Minnesota definitely beating San Francisco and Houston made them seem like the real deal. So maybe next week the Jets will get more of a test. But again, this week their job is to blow Denver out. That's their job. If they want to prove that they're a good team, their job is to blow Denver out. And then once they blow Denver out, then the following week, then they can start talking about whether the Jets are for real or not. It's a shame that Minnesota's looking good, especially with Sam Darnold, but the Jets still should go in there and beat them, go into London and beat them. And so, this Denver game is just a must blowout. McDonald's improving now if the Jets can keep Clemens in contain. I wish the Jets would not give Clemens the freedom to knife inside because he's always wrong. I wish he would just hold up an edge. The guy can't read a crack block if it's coming. Gets down blocked all the time. Really, it says he's 272 pounds, but it's just as bad as, I don't say just as bad, but because McDonald also gets stopped by tight ends. But it's just the recognition is just as bad as McDonald's. And for a guy who can't rush a passer, you would think that at the very least his run defense would be stellar, and it's not. It's below average. What's your thoughts on Sherwood? I've loved his development. I feel he's looking even better than expected. Yeah, look, Sherwood looked pretty good last year, especially in the run game. Didn't get a ton of opportunities in coverage, and kind of his stats were worse than he played. The Jets have definitely developed him. It's another really big feather in their cap. Like Quincy, they took Sherwood, 6th-round safety, turned him into a linebacker. Again, to the point where he's probably a better. It might be too early to say this. He's probably a better player than C.J. Mosley at this point. And yeah, even better than expected. Again, it's like Quincy. I'm not saying Sherwood is Quincy. I'm not saying that he's playing as well as Quincy did last year. But again, the Jets just have a net for developing linebackers. And I think that that's one of the reasons that they've kept Zaire Barnes on their roster. Obviously, he's on IR now again. But they've kept him on their roster because they think that they can develop him in the same way. And so, yeah, I mean, again, credit to the Jets coaching staff and Sherwood himself, too. I mean, he looks far more athletic than he did coming out of college. He looks really good. Good communication, everything like that. And yeah, I mean, I agree. He, the only shame of it is that he's a free agent after this year, so the Jets will need to re-sign him. And if he keeps playing and looking good, it will be hard to re-sign him because he really should be a starting linebacker somewhere. He'll be a starting middle linebacker somewhere. Thank you. Now we need to win 137-9, 10 at the most. Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. The more the merrier. Just keep building up. And obviously, Sean Payton is persona non grata for Aaron Rodgers, and so hopefully that shows up too. Which one do you think is a semi-hot take? That Sherwood is better than Mosley? Yeah, probably. Stanley, thanks for joining. Do the Jets need to elevate Jalen Mills, who's good against the run, to replace Davis in the big nickel package? I mean, it's an interesting question. The Jets played Isaiah Oliver more this past week. What's his name? Ashton didn't play as much after he struggled in week 1. I always thought of Jalen Mills more as a cornerback than a safety. I also don't think he's great. Let's see. I mean, again, I don't trust PFF as far as I could throw them, but let's see. Run defense. Yeah, so he was generally considered he's been mixed in run defense in his career, according to PFF. I mean, look, maybe it makes sense, but I think that they signed Mills more just for depth. But again, Jalen Q is a rookie. They might as well have some depth on their practice squad. But yeah, Ashton looked pretty bad in week. He looked really bad in week 1. And I mean, I'm more for to stop the run, play, especially once Mosley comes back, play the 4-3, play the base, because I feel like, again, when teams go into 12 personnel, you're automatically at a disadvantage in the run game if you have a big nickel on the you have a safety on the field instead of a linebacker. And again, Sherwood is good enough that like 2 years ago, the Jets played plenty of base, and the Quan Alexander played 49% of their snaps. I don't see why Sherwood couldn't take over that role. He's looked really good, and again, I think the Jets should kind of go back. The Jets should kind of go back to some of the 2022 scheming. CJ would be in 4-3 and Sherwood with Williams and nickel. Yeah, they're not going to do that. CJ, they love CJ, but that probably would be a better lineup. Honestly, Sherwood brings that speed and violence Sal always talks about. Yeah, I mean, he got called for some reason. I thought it was a bad call, but yeah, he definitely does. He's a quintessential Jets defender, and so yeah, JT Mosley is cerebral, but Sherwood really brings the heat. I mean, yes and no. You don't really know what Mosley sees and doesn't. I mean, what Sherwood sees and doesn't, because he's obviously called the play. I mean, he relayed the plays, and you see him communicating a lot with the Jets, and so you don't know. If Sherwood is actually communicating. Obviously, Mosley is more experienced, and so he's seen more. But we don't really necessarily know how Sherwood is in that communication aspect. And I suspect that his current superior capabilities on the field to Mosley's is worth the trade-off, even if Mosley will identify more. Again, I'm not in the huddle. I don't know what is being said, how the communication is going. Obviously, you don't. I don't know if we saw actually there was one blown coverage in this game that they got away with on a blitz, and perhaps that was on Sherwood. But again, you never know, and so this part you don't know how cerebral Sherwood is or is not. Dan, thanks for joining. Have I ever talked X's and O's with Connie? No, I haven't, but that's actually someone good that I might want to bring on the podcast or at least speak to. So thanks, and I appreciate the kind words. Sherwood will be totally fine, especially against a rookie quarterback that won't do anything complicated at the line. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, look, I think Mosley's going to be back this week. Salah seemed to indicate that, but I think Sherwood would be fine even if Mosley was out. Sherwood's read and react time is far superior than CJ's. Yeah, I mean, for sure, he's faster. he's also, I think, at this point a little bit stronger than CJ. He definitely seems like it. He seems to take on blocks better, and so yeah, he gets into his spot quicker. And I mean, look, I think Sherwood's a better player at this point. I'm giving Mosley his flowers. Look, he hasn't looked elite, but he hasn't looked elite or even close to it. Honestly, he wasn't elite last year. He was a bit overrated in that category. You saw what Njoku did to him. There were other players who also beat him a lot. It's hard to tell in coverage who's responsible, and that's kind of why his numbers look great. And PFF gave him a great coverage grade, but he wasn't great in coverage last year. And he definitely looks like he's slowing down now. And honestly, I would go as far as to say that the Jets should probably re-sign Sherwood next year and release Mosley. I mean, it's hard to say that. They love Mosley, but I think he's really slowing down at this point. He's getting older. Sherwood gets not on reading and reacting. CJ gets not on intelligence. The question is, which one's more important in the Jets defense at this point? Particularly because they play such a read and react defense. It seems like read and react might be more important than the intelligence. Mosley definitely looks like he lost a step. He was bad against tight ends last year in coverage. Sure, he was. I mean, it wasn't great. And so, look, I'm fine with having CJ in there at this point, but I do think they should be playing more base to have Sherwood on the field rather than the big nickel, especially with Ashton Davis looking so bad. I think Sherwood can more than hold his own in 12 personnel, and I'm just that's something that I'm very into right now. On that note, I know it hasn't been the longest stream in the world. When I go live myself, I tend to go a little bit shorter. But thank you to everyone who joined. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe to JetsXFactor.com, discount code 80, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, and have a great day.